people are willing to work, but you have to, for me, you have to lead them or they're not going to work for you anymore. So you actually have to show up and do the work and can't just expect for people to do it because you told them to do it. In my experience, people want to learn by example.
Hello, everybody. David Donaldson here with Entrepreneurial Impact. I'm joined today with Nicole Canole from East and Ivy. And unfortunately, Joe Martin is not with us today, so we're just going to run solo with it. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me.
Nicole, while it looks like you're sitting in a living room, you're actually up in New York getting ready to join the Inman conference. So
I am.
That's
Yes.
pretty cool.
I know, it's great. It's dark and gloomy, so I actually have my phone light facing towards me so you can see me and I don't look like a grainy mess. So yay for virtual backgrounds.
What drove you to heading up north for Inman?
So Place is the larger team that I am associated with, and we have a lot of our partners who are speaking, and I came up here to support. And I also just love to hear what's going on from all different industries and different brokerages. So yeah, would love to hear in real life.
It's amazing. I talk to a lot of people all the time, and they do nothing but focus on business, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an incredible aspect and a lot of things that can be overlooked when we don't stop to listen and hear what other people have to say. So I love that you're kind of saying, hey, you know what? I'm pouring into myself.
Well, absolutely. But I'm not just pouring into myself, I'm pouring into my team. So our job is, as leaders, is to be the most knowledgeable that we can be. And you're not going to be doing that just sitting behind a computer. It's about understanding what else is going on out there.
Very true. So take us back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your background. Where did you get your drive and your entrepreneurial spirit? How did that start for you before you realized that, hey, I want to run a large and successful business organization?
I mean, are we taking it all? I was going to say, are we taking it all the way back? Because it's my first lemonade stand that my dad had built for me whenever I was a kid.
It all starts somewhere, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's where I got my entrepreneurial spirit from. It was my dad, because he was an entrepreneur. He had a mobile home moving business. And I remember seeing pictures because I was too young, but like pushing back the curtains because he came home in the transporter and I'm like, Daddy, So it was that. And I was in the military for 8 years. And whenever I was getting out, I went into the civilian sector. Into the government, the Department of Veterans Affairs, as a financial policy analyst. And while I was doing that, I had an interior design business that I was doing part-time. And that led me into meeting a lot of different real estate agents because of staging and everything else. And they're like, oh, with your background and your tenacity, you would be really great at getting into real estate. So I decided to take the course, and it turns out that they were right. So yeah.
So how long did you run your own staging company before you got into real estate?
I'm still running a staging company.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of that's a great secondary business to own.
For sure.
From within
so I was staging for a different company prior to getting licensed. And that was from 2013 to 2015. And then I just started kind of staging my own listings in 2015 to 2017. And 2017 is when we actually opened a full-blown operation of a staging company.
Okay. And then you got your real estate license?
2015.
2015. Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much has changed between now and then.
God, isn't that the truth? Yeah. Whenever we were just at the Keller Williams event, whenever they were having people raise their hand, the Virginia region was having people raise their hand of who's been in the business back in 2008, 2009. And so many people in that room it was like a third of them, I suppose. And like getting to hear their stories of what happened during that versus what's happening now is eye-opening.
It was different. I got my license in 2007, and I always joke around. I'm like, you would talk about an incredible education. And it was, having been on the ground in Arizona, that really was one of the more hard to hit areas around the country. And to still be in the business is kind of surprising to me a little bit because it was hard. Mm-hmm. But I learned a ton. I really did. So you saw a lot of people come out of that time and become very, very successful. And so when I look at where we're at now, and obviously we're in challenging times, but I don't know if you noticed it, but actually I just got out of a meeting and I was talking to some people this weekend. Things all of a sudden had shifted again.
Right. Well, we were just talking about that. We're seeing multiple offers, and I had a listing that it fell out of contract because of a home sale contingency. It went back on. It was under contract with multiple offers within 24 hours, which was bananas.
1 point, right?
1 point.
1 point. Re-energize the base. That's part of the conversation that we have right now. It's like, look, I get it. It is going to look. COVID was challenging for people because it was so busy. It was hard to get houses, and we've struggled. So you had to be very organized and very professional, right? So we learned through that. I learned in 07, and you're learning again that small things make a difference. And the challenge between now and then isn't that it's the R word, recession, or anything else, because the factors are different. We still have pent up buyer demand, and they're there. So it's about how we have the conversation with them to say, look, you can buy while it's low and think that things are terrible, or you can wait till it's crazy busy and be in fight with everybody else.
Right.
And that's interesting. But let's talk about it. So you ran a business and now you're running a business. So what did you learn from staging? Right. You laugh because I'm sure there was a lot of lessons learned that applied for you to real estate, that either you made the same mistakes or did you learn from those mistakes?
I mean, everything is a learning opportunity. If you don't learn from your mistakes, then what's the point of making them?
True.
But what did I learn from my staging business that I took into real estate? It's really just entrepreneurial spirit in general. You have to really watch the books carefully. You have to really watch your P&L, because one day you can look up and then all of a sudden you've outspent what you're actually making. And then what's the point? The point of a business is to make money. So on that side of things, it was a huge overlap in the financial way. And then whenever it comes to personnel, people are willing to work, but you have to lead them, or they're not going to work for you anymore. So you actually have to show up and do the work, and can't just expect for people to do it because you told them to do it. In my experience, people want to learn by example.
I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says, you can't expect people to work as hard and care as much about your business as you
never.
And it's unfair to them to have that kind of expectation.
Yeah. I've been really blessed with my team on the real estate side of house. They do care because I do believe that they're my partners. Every single person who works for me, down from, an executive assistant all the way up to top producing agents, we are truly partners because you believe in me as much as I believe in you. So we have to pour into each other. And that's just our team culture. But that was born after a lot of mistakes. God, I'll never forget my first assistant. The way that we ended up parting ways was horrible. And it's something that I look back on and I regret personally, because I'm like, I can't believe that I reacted that way over just something that I saw on social media. And I was like, what is this? And that ended up as us actually getting rid of our relationship that day. And it was just like, I could have handled that so much differently. And it could have been a coaching moment instead of me just reacting emotionally.
I think it's very easy to say we could have done things differently. And we've all been in the moment and reacted away and go, oh man. Yeah. But I think that's what's real about being a business owner. Right? If you haven't had something go wrong, then you're just not trying hard enough, or you haven't been in long enough, right? Because it certainly does. And we're going to make mistakes. Right. But you recognized it, whatever it was, right? It happened. Yeah. But you recognize it, you remember it, and chances are you'll do it differently the next time, because there's going to be a next time. And right?
I have 100. There will never be a next time like that, because I had a business partner, and our experience was good until it wasn't. It's just like I've learned a lot. And that breakup was, I laugh because I'm like, that was harder than my divorce. That was breaking up with a business partner is a lot more emotionally draining than going through a separation with a spouse. Yeah,
I can respect that.
Yeah.
So that was the first entity, first.
That was the first. Yeah, that was the first partnership.
But it didn't stop you to having other partnerships.
No,
right?
It didn't. But it did. It was funny because I was actually talking to Ben, my business partner at Place. Our first conversation was about partnership. And I was like, I've been in partnerships before, and I don't think I can ever do it again, because it was so emotionally draining towards the end. And we had a very long conversation that ultimately led me into the most wonderful experience of my life, truly, which is my newfound partnership. Well, we've been with them a little over a year now, but with Ben and Chris and my other partners around the country, they're literally remarkable people that give me so much life and so much joy. and challenge me whenever I need to be challenged. And that is the difference of being in such a healthy and beautiful partnership versus two people who don't really know what they're doing and they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
So that's interesting when you think about relationships and how they can change this, because when we're open to it, we never know where things could come from, right? You had an experience that was unpleasant and you had said probably to yourself, never again will I go into business with somebody. But then what changes? So what was the conversation that allowed you to go, you know what? I did it. I tried it. It didn't work. I'm learning from it, but now I'm open to hearing other opportunities to get in relationship again.
Because the conversation was just much more different this time, which was they are more experienced in business, because really what Place is a business development platform. And so like understanding that they're here to help me grow in the same way of like me having to help them grow financially and through our people and growth of agents and things like that. So it's just like we brought two very different skill sets. And I think the biggest difference is that the ego is very much removed in this situation versus my past partner and I, we were both very ego driven. He was a top producing team in the office. I was a top producing solo agent in the office. And so as new rock star real estate agents, you have a lot of ego, and I had to let all of that go and truly like be very vulnerable with myself and my emotions and understand that there's no difference between me and down to, you know, the person who comes and cleans our office. Like we are literally all people, and remove all of that. So just being very vulnerable with one another and saying exactly what our core values is. And just as I grow as a human being, I hope that answered the question. That's the difference. It's like I'm a very different place now that, you know, it's 5 years later and I know who I am through therapy and business coaches and everything else. I don't need the ego anymore.
There's a lot of humility, and it's not always easily attained.
No.
And it's not necessarily ingrained in us. And it only comes through experience.
Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like you've kind of gotten to that point. I used to joke around with people because I was not a humble person. I was not humility. And at one point in time, somebody actually made me memorize the definition of being humble.
That's amazing.
Not proud or hardy, not arrogant or assertive. You can look that up. And that was something that I learned over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I want to say, I think it was somebody when I was in the service, but it's those things that when you digest those and you think about it, like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And if I become a different person, or just, you don't even have to become a different person, but you just grow. Yeah,
it's definitely growth. I mean, whenever I'm constantly looking at my core values and checking in with myself and like, who am I? What am I about? Am I going towards the aim of the direction of the person that I want to be? And one of those is growth, but it's like, it's growing in the right ways. And for me, I had to really go internal, especially last year, because there was a lot of parts of me that I didn't really know. But in order to be the strongest leader and the strongest agent for my clients and my staff and God, everybody that I come in contact in this world, is like, I need to be the best version of me, which takes growth.
And that's not necessarily just identifying it doesn't necessarily make it so either.
No.
Right. You touched on getting help and being able to talk to people. I think there's a vulnerability aspect that is tied to the humility to going, we really just have to strip us down to our core and look at these things from a lot of different angles and figure out, okay, how's the best way to go about being me so that I can be successful, let alone that what my success or my business growth and how that impacts others. Right. You got to start with yourself.
For sure. Everything starts with yourself.
It does, but that internal impact, you don't necessarily know at first what that will be. So if we look at, so you're somebody that's you have a very large social following, right? And that impact from growth, that can scare a lot of people, but you're very involved. Where did that come from? I mean, did you just say, hey, I see this medium and I'm going to run with it? Or was there something more deliberate to it than that?
No, there was nothing deliberate to it about it at all. Honestly, it was just a way for me to connect. I'm not from this area. I'm from South Carolina. So I had to, whenever I first sat down and whenever we're looking at the business aspect of this, I had to sit down. I'm like, how am I going to be able to do this? And I literally pulled down my Facebook profile and I put everybody into a spreadsheet and I categorized them as to who they were. So, okay, I guess it was a little bit more methodical than just, I was like, now that I'm saying that.
Yeah, and in case you're listening alone, I hope she's talking about, you could actually have Facebook lists which most people don't utilize.
Right. So you can put the Facebook list. And I literally categorized everybody so I knew exactly who I was marketing to. But how I got, friends and followings or whatever, that's just authenticity. That's just, I've never tried to be anybody else than who I am in that moment. And I show people that. And so that just happens to garner some interaction.
When people are looking at social, and I think you touch on it, and being real and transparent and humble matters, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I believe that for a lot of people, that when you're utilizing it and you're looking at it from a social aspect, it's actually hard at first, but you realize very quickly that your digital voice, right, can help you develop and become somebody you never even realized you could become.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of social, right, to me is almost hard to quantify.
Right. And I think it's a misconception that you have to have 1 million followers in order to do a big business off of social. Like whenever it comes to my Facebook, I'm very strategic as to who my friends are. And either I've had to actually meet you before, whether it be at a conference or in person, or I don't just friend people. One, because, all the craziness with people getting hacked and all that. But just because it's a much more intimate experience and you have a lot more interaction whenever you actually know the people on your profile.
And I like the way that you're talking about, and I'm still waiting for my acceptance, by the way, but now that we
Did you sorry, man. I'll look right after this. This is literally the first time we've ever met.
So. It is. So it's okay.
So now, see, I'm true to my word. I will friend you.
There we go. But I look at that. I look back on social media, and I was a product of the 70s and the 80s and the communities that I grew up in the Philadelphia. But social media allows us to revisit that again. But you can get up close and personal through social. You learn a lot.
But you know what's funny about this? And this is not business related. It's looking at all of these. This is all these people who are going back into old relationships from high school because they're friends. And I'm like, don't revisit this. You dated them in high school. Don't do this. I promise you, this is not going to work out well.
Well, revisiting them or connecting with them.
No. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, because it's amazing how quick. But I think that it is in that capacity it can be challenging. But there has certainly been many people that I picked up with that I have not talked to in 20, 30 years, but yet through the medium of social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or if you're into TikToking now or Snapchats, as my son, who I'm always yelling at because he's always, I got to take a picture of where I'm at. I got to snap. Whatever that is, that's who we are. The world has changed, but I love that it allows us that connection again.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And some of my favorite people, I actually are high school friends that I, get to see now.
Yeah. I mean, and they're there, and it's an easier aspect. At the same time, there's a mindset to it. So what does that look like? If you're connecting with someone, I know you touched on, you said you'd be real, but how do you be real through texting and typing, essentially through a keypad? Like, how do you express that?
I guess just not trying to be too scripted. That's something that always bothers me. Like I'm in my personality, I'm a jokester. I am sarcastic. I try to help my personality come through in words as much as I can. It means I'm not always going to show up made up. I'm like, if I'm going to go on there and start talking smack at some point, like I'm just not a negative person. So I don't really go negative on anything, but it's just, like razzing people and all that. Like, I don't know. I'm just me. I don't. How else do you explain just being me?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. For me, like I look at I think emojis help me get away with a lot of stuff. Fair. Like if I have to read things, I'm like, well, I better throw an emoji in there. Oh, I better throw in two, right?
That's just the world that we live in. I mean, like even emails these days, you have to be super careful as to what you're putting out there, just because it could go poorly. I learned that was another lesson that I learned in business at the beginning of last year. I had wrote an email because, if you look at the disc profile, I'm a 99D and a 99I. Like you can't get more happy and more personable and more direct. So sometimes that really can bother people whenever they're reading into words with their emotions. And so I wrote an email that was very, what I thought, non-emotional. Here it is. But it turned out to really hurt the person's feelings. And it took a lot for us to be able to get back our relationship just based on this one, what I thought was a very non-emotional professional email. So emojis help. It means you're not mean.
You're right. And I tell people all the time, I says, like, look, social media is great. Email, written word is great and challenging and dangerous. Right. So that's why I also say, please, 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 while this is a great, easy way to communicate with people, continue to pick up the phone, because that solves a lot of things too. Right. The written word, God bless the English language, is great. However, interpreted wise.
Yeah. That's probably because I'm always looking at how this could possibly be interpreted before I ever push post, because I've had this experience. And last year was a really big emotional intelligence journey for me. It's trying to look at could this be misconstrued into something negative? So I look at that and I check myself before I ever post anything, with still being able to speak in my own voice.
Totally get that. And there has certainly been many an email I have scripted that I had to make sure I took the person's name out so I don't actually send the email, because it's something very cathartic to me in actually being able to type out what I want to say before sending what I actually send.
That's so funny. I was talking about one of my partners the other day, and I was like, bro, do you know how many times I write you messages and they're not always the nicest, but they just stick over. He's like, I know, I do it too. I'm like, perfect. Yeah.
I think if you're in business long enough, you get frustrated long enough, there are things you want to say that you can't say. And I'll say it again, it's very cathartic in typing out. But for those of you listening, be very careful and make sure you don't, when you hit reply, that you actually remove the reply.
For sure. And there's something to be noted about some things are just better whenever you pick up the phone and have a conversation. Some things don't need to go back. Like if you get something that could potentially be emotionally charged, pick up the phone and call somebody. They're not going to eat you.
Yeah.
They might, but
I agree. Unfortunately, the phone conversations is a lost cause because a lot of people just won't even answer regardless. But I think if with the infrequency of phone calls, that when you do call, they'll probably realize that, hey, it's just important. Let me get back, or follow it up with a text like, hey, we need to talk. Mm-hmm. When I look at a lot, there's still an amazing amount of people I could say it's amazing too. It's amazing how many people are on social media, but it's still amazing how many people are not, especially business owners.
Yeah.
Right. What would you say to those that have yet to embrace the technological aspect that is social media from a database mindset? Because they're just like, oh, it's just noise. I don't want to be there.
Well, then hire somebody to be there, because unfortunately that's where everybody's hanging out. So for me, yes, my personal page, I post and I do all this stuff, but it's not a lot of business related stuff. It's mostly personal, but my director of marketing, she handles all that stuff for us. She is making sure that we're posting on a consistent basis. Like, we understand the importance of it. So you're doing yourself a disservice. One, it's the cheapest possible platform to be able to get your information out there, and the people that you know, like, and trust are all out there. So you should be friends with them. It's the cheapest advertising you're ever going to be able to do. To do it. And you could turn on the TV and everybody's telling you that. It's just, I understand. Like, I was in a taxi on the way from the Amtrak over to the hotel today, and I was talking to the guy in the car, and I was like, well, why don't you do Instagram, or why don't you do Facebook? And he says, well, it's because I'm a very private person. Well, be private then. But you know what, man, like, you literally are an independent contractor at this point, because he doesn't just drive a cab. So yeah, he has a dog collar business, which I love.
A dog collar business.
Yeah, he does custom dog collars. I love it.
All right. Well, hey, we can send us some. We'll put that link down below. You can share it with everybody.
He doesn't have a link.
Oh my goodness.
That's what I'm saying. It's all word of mouth.
See, now you have to text him like, I had the ultimate marketing opportunity for you, and there was nowhere I could send all these people.
Right. What possibly you could do, man.
Our tens and tens of listeners wouldn't know where to go for their dog collars. No, I see a lot of people, and we're obviously focusing on social today, and that's kind of the theme. That is that limiting belief of that I can't do it, or I'm personal, or I don't know what to say. I think a lot of times if you just say, hey, who you said, just do it. Yeah. Start as a voyeur. See how people are engaging. See how people are talking. Start with your advocates and your friends.
Well, I think that's part of the problem with limiting belief, is because comparison is a thief of all joy. So if you get out there and you start looking at each other, and then it's like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as Coalition Properties, or I'm never going to be as good as, the Ryan Serhant team, or whatever, whoever it is you're looking at, then you're never going to do anything, because you're just going to sit there and be scared. But this goes back to the authenticity is just go out there and say, hey, I'm a realtor. Don't be a secret agent, or, hey, or I sell dog collars, or I do staging, I do whatever. Just go out there and make sure people know it, but try to do it in your own voice so it doesn't sound so salesy, because people don't want to be advertised to. I think that's the biggest tip, is like, people don't want to be advertised to on social media, because we go to scroll and to get the dopamine hits. So you have to do something that's going to give dopamine hits in order for somebody to keep coming back to your content and for your viewability to be good.
I think you're right. And I think there's that salesy aspect is a paralyzing fear for many people. But if you go back to where you started, which was just be yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you're engaging, and I agree with you, engage with a smaller audience versus the massive audience.
So this is where I forget about this sometimes. Like, whenever I was doing the categorization of stuff, it wasn't just about me advertising me. It was me going through and saying, okay, this person just had a baby. This person just got 2 new dogs. This person just had a life change. And then I could call them and have a conversation. So even if you don't want to go out there, social media is the biggest tool just to see what people are doing in their life. And if you look at the 5 key reasons why people move, downsizing, and, what is it? It's like the 5. They just talked about this. So we were having at our team meeting, we were laughing. Do you remember what it is? It's like downsize.
5
Ds. 5 Ds. Yeah. The 5 Ds of why people move.
Downsizing, divorce, death.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody fill in the last 2, but yes, we were just talking about this too.
Right. Okay. So if you're on social media and you remember these key triggers to get you why people move, then call them to see if this is happening, and you can get them ahead of time. It's like one of my very first broker ever. He would always go and ride around garage sales on the weekend, because typically whenever people do garage sales, they're trying to declutter, and perhaps they haven't actually hired a real estate agent yet.
Yeah. That's brilliant, actually.
Yeah.
We were talking, and I was saying, you start talking about organizing your database, and I say a lot when I talk about Facebook lists, and it could be tags in your database, but the ability, I think the shortfall for a lot of people is that you can actually get very deliberate with an audience in social media. You can blast it to everybody, or if you organize that database of social media into lists, then what you're saying can get seen and heard by more people, and it's more relevant.
For sure.
So putting in the work, which is what I heard you say in the beginning, is that you put in the work to get organized.
Definitely.
You didn't just get on social to get busy. You got organized and you leveraged that tool.
Yeah. People forget that social media is 100% a database. So
I don't know if they don't forget, or if they don't allow themselves to recognize it.
Maybe. Yeah.
Right. So, well, awesome. So we're wrapping up here. It's a quickly 30 minutes, right? And you've got to get ready for your conference. But if you were to think back, okay, and how you started, and now you have East and Ivy, what would you share with anybody to say, hey, if I knew this then, this is what it would be?
If I knew this then, the importance, this is going to sound like a broken record, the importance of a database. So it took me a long time to be able to get my brevity to a point to systematically be touching people.
And by brevity, she meant command. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, sorry. Sorry. We also use command. Right. But my CRM system, I would have taken my CRM system a lot more seriously in the beginning, because what it was me and my phone, or me and my spreadsheets, or me and my list. And that's great if you have something, but command has the AI to be able to touch your database systematically. And so it was a lot of me being on the phones and being in person, but your social can touch this, your bots can send out text messages on your behalf, your emails can get automatically sent for you. Just an example would be, we have a plan that goes out to all of our past clients, and it really is in our voices, and it's asking people about what kind of plans do they have for the year, not just in real estate, but just in general. And that garners a lot of response back. So take that seriously, because you can do a lot more business just from really tapping into your database and your CRM.
Yes. Harvesting that information and being intentional with it. And the great thing is that AI, the automation behind it, but you still have the ability to customize that message and what that looks like. I think that's a disconnect for a lot of people, that yes, these are the tools of the trade today, right? However, you have a lot of saying what that looks like.
Oh, for sure. Everything that we do is custom written. It's we'll do the 10 days of pain or whatever, these different scripts that they have in there. But if it's not in our voice, we're not going to send it.
Right. You alluded to scripts earlier, and I always talk about what scripts are necessary to you to understand what to say and how to say it. And then you truly become masterful in it when it is becomes completely integral to who you are. And it's no longer scripted because it's just everyday conversation now.
And it's actually funny that you say that. So we script practice 4 days a week so we have power ups in the morning, and then we go into lead generation directly after that for 2 hours. And so before that, during our power up, we do script practice, and that script practice will have one agent read whatever the script is verbatim. And then immediately I'm like, all right, now take this, and how can we spin this as like, who wants to go next, and saying this in your own words, because what we're not going to do is go out there and read this thing verbatim, because you're not going to be able to engage your audience. So it's important to ingrain it, but even more important to have it in your own words.
All right. So if I'm a new agent, okay, and I'm just getting started, and I don't have the ability to have somebody run my social media account for me.
Oh, you always do join a team. That's the reason why teams exist, is to be able.
There is leverage in that. However, there's still a lot of individual agents out there.
Fair.
What does that cadence look like from interaction on social media?
What is it? I was talking to Delari about this the other day. It's like the 5-5-5, like 5 posts, 5 birthday cards, 5 phone calls or something like that every single day, or 5 contacts added to your database. I don't remember what it is, but I don't know. For me, it was just like, it's every day I'm posting something to my stories. And just, you have to remain relevant. So I would say you can't just post every once in a while. You have to be consistent, whether it be posting one time or posting 20 times on a story. I think my sweet spot is 5 or less. And I know for Jennifer, she's one of our agents on our team. She's one of our top producers. She's also an IFBB Pro competitor, she's a bikini competitor, professional bodybuilder. And so everybody knows that she is a competitor, but at the same time, they also know that she's a realtor, because it's like, she'll do something about her workouts, and then in the next one, she'll do a post about her sitting at her computer and lead generating, or talking to a client, or like helpful tips. So it's like, you can integrate both. Just make sure that you're being true to yourself every day.
And I think where we started to where we're at, that was an awesome wrap up of just be true to yourself, be comfortable with who you are, and do the work.
Do the work.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining Nicole on our episode today of Entrepreneurial Impact. And make sure you tune in for us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, y'all.